Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kanan King and I am still somewhat sick, if you can hear that, but I'm not as bad as I was last week. I took the wrong week to just take a break. If you are new to this channel, I tell interesting and scary stories that I have found online. If you have a scary story or experience that you would like to share of your own, there is a subreddit page down below which you can message in and be a part of the video. But for now, enjoy the video. I have a few family members that used to live in Mississippi, and a few of the houses in these different towns were haunted. For the sake of my family's privacy, I won't be naming the towns. Every summer in the early 2000s, for about 4 years, my childhood summer vacation would be predictable. Let's go see insert family member's name in Mississippi. And I dreaded it. It wasn't that I didn't want to see them, it was the heat. The almost unbearable hot Mississippi heat, and the stench of something rotten on the wind whenever it blew by. Pretty sure it was the Mississippi mud though. Also, there's not really much to do at all in these two different towns. The times we went to Mississippi. The library or park, take your pick. Also, the traveling distance from our house to these towns was long, and was cramped car ride with other family. I'll start off with the first house in the first town, that I remember first seeing when we would visit. First off, the vibes were off. Being in the place, you had a funny feeling of not being wanted. Said family member married a guy that already had kids that were grown and still living with them, but her husband and his kids did not like us being there. Can't say I liked them either, but we only seen said family member once a year, so they had to deal. But it wasn't just her stepkids and husband that were off. The place felt off. My grandma stayed in the stepsister's room while she stayed, I believe, at her mom's house the week we were there. There was this long hallway that connected two rooms, her room and another room. It was like a closet/storage space, but I would always think that was a very weird thing. A closed hallway that connected to two rooms and was built that way. I've never heard of another room having this feature apart from real old houses. This house wasn't very old. It was built, I'm guessing, late 80s. Well, my grandma heard scratching from behind that door, like someone was in there scratching with their nails. Also, my family member we visited. Her and her husband's room was the other room connected, and she heard it. And it scared her so bad she put a heavy trunk and other junk in front of that door, so that way nothing could come out. If I remember right, those doors had locks, so they stayed locked. The family member we visited, she had also seen things in that house before we got there. Things that make your hair stand on end. She says she's seen something that looked like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, crawling on the ceiling, looking right at her while she was in bed with her husband. In the dim light. Scared her real bad. Besides this fireplace in the living room, on both sides was openings. Doorways to go into the kitchen, so basically two open ways that led from the living room to the kitchen. My mom was walking the length behind the fireplace, where the kitchen was. My grandma said in the first doorway she saw her as a little girl skipping along, out of the corner of her eye, wearing a pink, frilly, old-timey dress, and blonde curled hair. And this little girl was skipping. When my mom made it to the other doorway, it was my mom again, not the little girl. Suddenly mom told grandma. Just then I had the weirdest feeling. I felt like I was a little girl again, with not a care in the world. Then grandma said, "You're not gonna believe this, but I saw you as a little girl." Needless to say, they were both freaked out. The little girl that grandma saw did not look like my mom when she was little. But I believe what happened was a ghost of the little girl possessed my mother for a few seconds. Just recently, I showed a bunch of old-timey pictures of girls' dresses to my grandma to try and narrow down the timeline that the girl was from. I put together a drawing of how my grandma described her. She said it looked exactly what she had seen. There was a sunroom in the house. This happened only one time, but there was sounds of something banging, like literally someone was in there throwing crap in that room, like lawn chairs or whatever. Everyone went to check and there was nothing. Nobody. Mom and grandma slept with the lights on, ceiling lights all night. Matter of fact, they barely slept. The story behind that house was that the guy that had it before them, well, his wife went missing, gone, and I think people thought for a while he murdered her and hid the body. On the property? Who knows. A few years later, our family member and her wonderful stepkids and husband moved to another house in a different town. This I do remember. Late at night, when everyone was in bed, we all heard something roll up and down the hallway like a ball. My family member's daughter had a little tricycle that she rode around in the house, so that was maybe what we heard. We only heard it one night, but it was enough. I can't really remember what else happened in that house, but I'm sure there were other things. After a few years in the summers in Mississippi stopped, another chapter closed in my childhood. Said family member divorced and moved her and her daughter, and we've never been back to Mississippi since. Near my old house, I saw something at night with my friends that could only be described as a draugr. We played Skyrim at the time and all agreed it wasn't a person. It literally looked like a ghoul. Whatever it was evoked such a strong sense of horror we drove on immediately. My boyfriend today has seen similar stuff. They looked like elderly rotting people, but they move weirdly and are often seen from cars and usually in the middle of the road, accompanied by a strong need to get out of the area. This is in New England, by the way. I usually have a strong need to want to help people, so if I thought it was an old person in need of aid, but no, definitely not. Not sure what these things are, if they are crawlers or ghouls or what. My girlfriend and I are renting a cabin in West Virginia. On Thursday, a nasty ice storm came through and knocked out the power. It has been out ever since. The whole country is dark and will be for a while. The animals are acting bold. Last night my girlfriend and I walked out to the end of the long driveway to get something out of her car. Her dog started staring at the edge of the field and went towards it. He is young and so he gets distracted and does sometimes wander. He doesn't run away, but you will look up and see him behind the house or something. Anyway, my girlfriend runs to him and starts to bring him back when I spot something at the edge of the field. It's what the dog was looking at. I see it run across the road and into the field. It was very low to the ground and pale in color. It's too fast and dark to make out what it was. I assume it's Coyote. So I call out to her, "Hey, there's something over there. Get back here." And she walks over to me by the car. From there we hold the light and shine it over that direction. I see its eyes looking at us. Then I see more sets of eyes, probably about 7 in total. They are shifting up and below the hill in the field, hiding and peeking out to see us. At this point, we still think it's coyotes, so I keep the lights on them while she gets what she needs from the car. The thing is, I keep my lights and my eyes on them the whole time, and they seem to stand up. Suddenly their eye shine would rise up as if they stood up on their back legs. Their eyes went from about 1 to 2 feet off the ground to easily 5 to 6 feet. I did not mention this to her, and I just said, "Coyotes, let's go inside." Throughout the night, we would have to go outside to put gas in the generator, as the power was still off. She held the flashlight and I filled up the generator. She's shining the light around, keeping an eye out for anything, as well as keeping the dog with us. She spots 2 sets of eyes about 100 yards away from the bottom of the hill that the house sits on. She says, "Something's down there." I say, "Coyotes or a deer?" She says, "Whatever it is, it just doubled in size." Whatever it is, it just doubled in size. And sure enough, I look, and these things are rising up and back down, like the ones earlier. We have coyotes here. Everything about these events screamed coyote to me, but I cannot fathom how they stood up like that. I saw it run across the road, and though I did not get a good look at it, it was not a deer. It was fast and low to the ground. It did not jump up like deer do. I've been thinking about it all day. Like it had to be a coyote. But then, how did it get so tall? I was walking my cousin back from her dance at school because it was dark and she didn't have a ride. We got 4 blocks from my house where a couple of small stores and 2 bars are located. I'm not gonna say the names to avoid giving my location. This man walked up to us quickly. So quick he almost tripped on the curb to get to us. He smelled very odd. I can't pinpoint the smell, but it wasn't good. I want to say alcohol, but I've never been around any drinkers, so I can't say for sure. Anyway, he blurts out, "Are you my friend?" This was creepy and pretty unexpected. So after me and my cousin looked at each other, we both said, "No." He then said he was looking for his friend, and I said, "Okay." He didn't move for a minute, and I felt really uncomfortable, but then he asked if this was street name. And in hindsight, I should have said no, but I said yes. He thanked us and told us to have a good night. We walked away and my cousin felt really creeped out, so she kept glancing behind us. He ended up following us. He crossed the street so he was on the other side and began following us up the street. At first we gave him the benefit of the doubt, but when we both kept turning around to look at him, it became really creepy. He must have known or realized we were onto him because he stopped behind a car and ducked down. Then he began moving behind the cars, still following us up the road. After freaking out and whispering to each other, trying to decide whether or not to call the police, we just booked it from my house. We ran inside and locked the front door and told my mom and her boyfriend. So I guess that was that. I'm hoping he didn't see where I live because, I don't know, we ran and didn't look back. I work as a childcare professional, and one of the kids that I look after had recently gotten into hiking. I decided to take him to a really cool trail in Salt Fork State Park. We were all set to hike Hosak's Cave, but after parking right near the beginning of the trail hid. The entire trail is about half a mile, which is why I chose this trail for our hike that day. I also chose this trail because any time that I had been on it before, it was very busy and full of people and a very popular spot, which made me feel secure. However, this past summer, we had a cluster of severe summer storms which caused massive damage to the trail. So to my surprise, it was much more difficult and completely empty. I wasn't bothered by the trail being obviously empty because there was a small construction crew working on the bridge that was just barely visible from the trail road ahead. He was still up for the hike despite the entire width of the trail being washed out until it was no more than a foot wide, with a 6 to 12 foot drop off into a creek bed that is solid rock and several trees down. He is very athletic and I was confident in his abilities, if he was, and he was so excited to tackle our adventure. We made it all the way to the platform that allows you to see the entire cave. There are many downed trees surrounding the platform and it was actually closed at this point, but we had made it this far, so we decided to maneuver around the platform and proceeded the few hundred feet into the cave. We spent the most time in this area due to difficulty, so I know exactly what it looked like. There were tree roots directly under the platform and you could climb down either side of them. It is also worth noting that Hosak's Cave is much more of a cliff with an overhanging rock formation and a trickle of waterfall directly in the middle. It is not a creepy close-up cave. It is very open and beautiful. We go to the cave and I notice a candle that was not burning recently, but had been at some point, sitting on a large rock that had a heart carved into it. I chalked it up to someone having a date or something and disregarded it. He wanted to climb to the top, where I noticed 2 more candles and 3 stacks of small rocks that had been stacked up by somebody. I definitely felt weird at this point, but it was about this time that he found a small puddle full of baby salamanders and wanted to catch them. It was the happiest that I have seen him in a very long time, and I didn't have the heart to tell him that it was time to go. We spent about an hour catching baby salamanders, and I watched him have the time of his life. We finally decided to leave, and when we got to the platform, dead center in the middle of the tree roots was a wet washcloth hanging that was absolutely not there before. He noticed it as well, but did not pick up on the severity of the situation that we were in. At that moment, I factually knew 2 things. 1, someone was watching us, and we did not see them. And 2, they were now potentially hiding in the woods and made it a point to not be seen, but to leave an object to be noticed. There was no running back with the narrow trail, and I was not about to tell him that we were in potential danger. I told him to go in front of me, and I just kept encouraging him that he was doing great over and over, and that seemed to speed him up naturally. I never saw anyone while we were on the trail. We got to the car and I locked the doors immediately. On our way out of the park, a very dirty man, probably in his 30s, came out of the woods and made it a point to stare at me with the most empty of expressions that I'd ever seen. The man followed me with his eyes and head as I drove by him and continued to stare at me until I couldn't see him anymore. I knew the third fact at that point. He made it a point to make himself apparent to me, and that facts 1 and 2 were true. That stare struck me for days, and I considered counseling after this, as it bothered me for several weeks, causing me severe anxiety. I tried to tell myself that maybe we were just interrupted his bath time and he was camping, and didn't want to startle us. After all, the crazy-looking man had ample time to do anything that he wanted while we were catching salamanders. I just cannot in any way rationalize why he stared into my eyes the way that he did, if he wanted to go unnoticed. Deep down, I know that it was much more likely that it was a deliberate action intended to scare me. He never had any idea how panicked I was, and to this day, it was the most fun I'd ever seen him have. He brings it up all the time, and it was a very positive experience for him. It was one of my worst experiences ever, and it made me feel sick and disturbed. Currently female. I can't really make sense of the situation, even now. This happened this past Saturday and I'm only just now feeling comfortable enough to talk about it. I spent the night out with my older sister and a couple of her friends. All we really did was go out to eat and then took a walk in the city. Nothing crazy. Some of the party of people had to leave for one reason or another, so I decided to call it a night. I had texted one of my guy friends and asked if he wanted to come over and watch a movie with me, to which he said yes. We went our separate ways. I met up with my friend outside of my apartment. To add a little context, my apartment is one single building with a backyard space that's shared with two other similar styled apartments. That may be important in a bit. When I pulled up, there was a car that parked across the street. I didn't think much of it. I assumed it was there for one of the neighbors. I went and changed while my friend scrolled Netflix for a movie to watch. As I'm leaving the bedroom, I hear a knock at the door. I'll admit this next part was incredibly stupid on my part. My area doesn't have many issues, so I got complacent. I opened the door to see a guy standing there. I'm a measly 5'6", and he was at least a head taller than me. He didn't look anything out of the ordinary though. Mid to late 20s, brown hair, fully groomed beard, moderately dressed. He then asked me where my sister was. I told him that I didn't have a sister. A lie. He then asked for her by name. I told him again that he was mistaken. Not only did he address her by her name and asked for her again, but he mentioned that he followed her from the place we had just left and he just wanted to see her. Absolutely not. Nothing about that sat right with me. I started to close the door, but he walked up and physically prevented me from doing so. Mama didn't raise no punk, so I planted my hands to his chest and pushed him back, which achieved nothing at all. He then started calling her name very loudly and continued trying to make his way past me. I yelled at him to leave and stood my ground best as I could. He ended up shoving me aside, but before he could get past me, my friend pushed him against the wall and hit him in the face. After that, he booked out of the door and into the parked car across the street. My friend pulled the door closed, locked it, then helped me up and moved me into the bedroom while he went to make sure that the guy left. I called the police and filed a report. Also, and this is the stupidity I mentioned earlier, I have a Ring doorbell camera. I should have just gouged him from the inside of the house and not opened the door. Carelessness got the better of me in that instant and I'm still kicking myself over it. This could have ended a lot worse. I showed my sister his picture and she has no recollection of who he is, though she said he looked somewhat familiar. The only theory that I have as to why he followed me is the fact that I accidentally left that night while wearing my sister's jacket. So my divided thoughts. 1. She somehow developed a stalker that mistook me for her while I was leaving. She's a hairstylist and part-time waitress, so this could easily bring people into her presence and she could not remember them. 2. She may know who it is, but doesn't want to say anything. I don't know why this crosses my mind. Paranoia maybe. And that's it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, please let me know down below in the comments. There are free links down below to support the channel. Please like the video, please comment. It does help the channel a lot. Even share with your friends. I've noticed some of you guys are doing that and it does help so much. I'm always excited when new people come in. But anyway, I hope you guys have an amazing week. I will see you next time. Bye bye.